Good morning, traders. It is Monday. Merry Monday. Hope everyone's back on beam 100%. Sometimes our weekends take more out of us than our weekday does. Hopefully, that wasn't you this weekend. But we are heading up to that time of the year as we get to the holidays. So I hope if you're going to take some time off, be a responsible guy about it. Don't try to trade if your head isn't 100% clear. Okay, let's get started. It's the 17th, Monday, 17th November. 2025. Here's our quote to get us started for today's Trader's Daily Discipline. I think it is often easier to make progress on mega ambitious dreams. Since no one else is crazy enough to do it, you have little competition. In fact, there are so few people this crazy that I feel like I know them all by first name. And that was by a guy named Larry Page, who is not a common household name, but you might remember him by the fact that you use his product every single day for the most part. I bet you do. He was a co-founder of Google, and it's his algorithms that he wrote with a friend of his while he was working on his PhD at I want to say Harvard. It was a big East Coast school, and he believed that he had a solution to what would make the internet everything we hoped it would be, and apparently he did. So that being said, I like this quote because one of the things that I think we fail to really appreciate about what the markets can truly provide is how close we really are to making our dreams a reality. And when I say how close we really are, if you sit down and just figure this for a second, take $10,000 and take a look at what you can margin if you used 75% of it in a particular market. And I think you'll find that you can leverage a pretty fair amount of product. Easily, 10 or 12 contracts of something for the day, maybe. But if you want to hold them overnight, maybe not so much. But if you look at that size position relative to what it would take to make $10,000 with that size position, you're not talking about a whole lot of movement. In most cases, I've looked at many different markets, and you can double your account balance um, pretty regular if you are willing to make that size commitment to the market every single time you trade. In other words, if you were to say, just for the sake of argument, that you're going to take your 10 grand and leverage 20 contracts of corn to make $10,000 isn't a big move at that point. Just a handful of cents, 10 or 15 cents, I think. 10, 10, yeah, 10-cent move, which the market makes that every week. Um, so when you really think about it, if you could make a commitment like that, and I'm not saying you should because it is risky, but if you did that, you're only 7 trades away from $1 million. In other words, if you take 10 grand and double it every time you make a big move like that, you need 7 trades in a row where you have the capacity to pick the winning trade. Now, when you get good enough to get 5 or 6 or 8 trades in a row, now the issue becomes how willing are you to really start pushing the envelope? Well, I think that is a very difficult question for most traders to answer. And the very fact that you put that on the table would be the kind of thing that would cause you to lose your nerve, which means that a lot of us end up making small money compared to the money we could make because we just won't take advantage of our own confidence and our trading equity. I met a lot of guys that were trading good sized money, but trading one lots all the time. And that was to keep their ratio relatively close to the chest. So, in the event they had some kind of major drawdown, they had plenty of money to recover from. And I agree. And there's nothing really wrong with that. But at the same time, how many times do we want to really spend all our time making 15% a year? I mean, is that really worth our time if we're going to be doing this kind of thing? I personally don't find it valuable at all. I mean, if I'm not going to earn 100 or 200% on my equity every year, what's the point of doing this? That's my attitude. And I know most people listening would be very happy with 50% a year consistently. Well, you know what? Maybe it's time to up your game and start looking for something that ambitious regularly. And I'll tell you why. Because the markets will provide you the opportunity to make that kind of money if you're interested. Can you do it in 7 straight trades? I don't know. That's a little aggressive. But it is something that nobody else is probably considering right now. And the markets will pay you if you're on the right side of a move. It doesn't know how big your position is or whether or not you're hanging it out there with every dollar you have, which is aggressive. That's a little crazy, I think, like Larry might say. But then again, that's okay if you really are willing to assume that risk. Because I really believe that. I believe part of the reason why we don't get where we would like to go in our trading has little or nothing to do with the markets or the opportunity. It really boils down to whether or not we really believe that we have the ability to make those changes in our own life and lead that kind of life. You know, some people are just very committed to not rocking their own boat. And I get that. But I want to encourage you to consider maybe something different. Maybe it's time to sit down with yourself quietly in a little place where you won't be disturbed and write out some, have a white hot session of thought with yourself about the coming year. What opportunities are going to be presented? You know, can I really make those kind of gains? Can I make myself a million next year? The answer is yeah, if you're really willing to look for it, you can. And I hope you will consider that reality as being very likely for you because you can get it if you want it. That's my view. All right, guys. Listen, have a great start to the week. I will see you tomorrow for tomorrow's Traders Daily Discipline in between now and then. Have a great day. Thanks.